The following morning, Samantha woke with a start. Momentarily confused by sleeping on her couch, then the memories of the previous night came flooding back. The crash. The alien woman Lyra. She sat up quickly, looking around her small apartment, half expecting it all to have been a dream. But there, standing by her kitchen window, was Lyra. Her disguise had worn off during the night, revealing her true appearance again. The slight purple tint to her skin seemed to shimmer in the morning sunlight, her cat-like eyes reflecting the light as she stared out at the human world with undisguised fascination. "You sleep for a long time," Lyra commented without turning around. "Nearly 8 hours. Is this normal for humans?" Samantha rubbed her eyes. "Yes, that's pretty normal. How long do your people sleep? We require only 3 hours of rest. Our minds process information during consciousness, not during sleep like humans seem to do." Lyra turned from the window, her head tilting slightly. "Your heartbeat has increased. Are you afraid of me now that you've had time to process?" Samantha considered the question honestly. "Am I afraid? No. Not exactly, more like overwhelmed. I mean, you're an actual alien from another planet standing in my kitchen." Lyra nodded as, "If this was a perfectly reasonable response, I understand this is a significant event for you. Meeting a being from another world. I assure you I mean no harm. My mission is only to observe and gather informations." Amantha stood stretching her stiff muscles from the couch. "What kind of information? About human development, technology, society, culture?" Lyra gestured vaguely with her hand. "All aspects of your civilization. The High Council needs this data to determine if Earth is ready for official first contact." Amantha moved to the kitchen to start coffee, needing the familiar ritual to ground herself in this new reality. "So you're like a scout." Lyra considered this an observer. "But yes, the concept is similar. We have been monitoring Earth for centuries, but your recent technological acceleration has prompted closer study as the coffee brewed." Samantha tried to process everything. This meant aliens had been watching humanity all along, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. It sounded like science fiction, but the evidence was standing right in front of her. "How long will you be here?" Samantha asked, pouring 2 cups of coffee and offering one to Lyra. "Mission parameters. Specify 3 Earth months." Lyra accepted the cup, cautiously sniffing the dark liquid before taking a small sip. Her eyes widened slightly at the taste, but she continued drinking it. "And your ship?" Samantha prompted. "Can it be fixedly?" Lyra set down the coffee cup. "Yes, the damage is repairable, but it will take time. Some systems need to regenerate naturally. I will need to check on it regularly. That explains where you go each day." Samantha thought, realizing that this arrangement had somehow become normal over the past several weeks since that fateful night when she found Lyra in the woods. The first few days had been awkward as they established a routine. Lyra would activate her human disguise each morning and pretend to leave for work along with Samantha, but instead would head to the woods to work on her ship repairs, then return to the apartment before Samantha got home. They maintained this careful dance as days turned into weeks. Lyra had questions about everything from why humans kept plants inside their homes to why they watched fictional stories on television. She documented everything in what looked like a thin silver bracelet that Samantha realized was some kind of advanced computer. When activated, it projected holographic displays that Lyra quickly turned off. Whenever Samantha came too close, "Are you not allowed to show me your technology?" Samantha asked one evening after dinner as they sat in the living room, Lyra watching a cooking competition with intense concentration. Lyra hesitated. "Protocol dictates minimal technological exposure to prevent contamination of developing cultures." She explained, then looked almost guilty. "But I have already broken protocol by interacting with you at all." Samantha smiled. "You crashed." "It wasn't exactly part of the plan." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. True, the High Council would consider this an extenuating circumstance. She paused, her attention returning to the television where chefs frantically plated their dishes. "I do not understand why they rush food preparation. Should be precise, not hurried." Samantha laughed. "It's entertainment. The time pressure makes it more exciting to watch. Excitement from watching others experience stress." Lyra mused. "Fascinating." She made a subtle gesture toward her bracelet, recording the observation. As weeks passed, Samantha found herself looking forward to coming home, knowing Lyra would be there with new questions or observations. It was like seeing the world through fresh eyes. Everything Samantha took for granted became interesting when explained. To someone experiencing it for the first time, Lyra proved to be a quick study. She absorbed information at an astonishing rate, learning human customs and behaviors from books, television, and internet access. Samantha had provided she still occasionally made mistakes like standing too close during conversations or not understanding sarcasm, but these moments became less frequent. Samantha noticed her own life changing too. She began taking different routes home, pointing out things she thought Lyra might find interesting. She brought home new foods for Lyra to try and found herself enjoying the aliens' reactions. She took Lyra to the library after hours, showing her the vast collection of books that represented human knowledge and creativity. Sometimes, Samantha would catch Lyra looking at her with an unreadable expression, a mix of curiosity and something else she couldn't identify in those moments. Samantha felt a strange connection to this being from another world. "I need to show you something," Lyra announced one evening, nearly 2 months into her stay. "Will you come with me to the woods?" Samantha agreed immediately, curiosity once again overriding caution. They waited until darkness fell, then made their way to the forest clearing where Lyra's ship remained hidden under its camouflage technology. They stood in the small clearing, moonlight filtering through the trees. Lyra touched her bracelet and the air shimmered, revealing a sleek craft about the size of a small car. It was silvery, blue with no visible seams or openings, its surface reflecting the moonlight like water. "It's beautiful," Samantha whispered, reaching out, then stopping herself, unsure if she was allowed to touch it. Lyra placed her hand on a specific spot on the hull, and an opening appeared. She gestured for Samantha to enter. The interior was surprisingly spacious, with curved walls and what appeared to be a pilot seat facing a transparent section at the front. Various displays glowed with symbols. Samantha couldn't read. "This is my observation vessel," Lyra explained, pride evident in her voice. "It is capable of faster-than-light travel and can sustain 1 Zeraxian for up to 1 Earth year. It also contains all my research equipment and communication systems." Samantha moved carefully through the ship, afraid to touch anything. "Is this where you've been coming every day?" Lyra nodded. "The damage has been more challenging to repair than anticipated." She gestured to a panel of crystals, some of which appeared cracked. "These guidance crystals were fractured in the landing. They are growing replacements. But the process is slow." Samantha noticed a section of the ship that looked like a sleeping area with what might be a bed, though it was shaped differently than human beds. "Do you sleep here?" "Sometimes," Lyra admitted, "early in my stay when I was uncertain of your intentions." She looked almost embarrassed. "But your dwelling has proven more comfortable for extended periods." Samantha smiled at the thought of Lyra preferring her small apartment to this advanced spacecraft. Something about that made her feel unexpectedly happy. As they exited the ship, Lyra reactivated the camouflage technology, the spacecraft once again appearing as nothing more than a large boulder. Samantha watched the transformation, still amazed by technology, centuries beyond human capability. They walked back toward the apartment in comfortable silence, the night air cool against their skin. When they reached the edge of the woods, Lyra suddenly stopped, looking up at the stars. "My home is there?" she said, pointing to a faint blue star barely visible among the thousands of others. Zorak's third planet in the Na'vi systems. Samantha followed her gaze, trying to imagine a world so far away with beings like Lyra going about their lives. "Do you miss it?" Lyra seemed surprised by the question. Zorax is efficient, organized, perfect in many ways. She hesitated, her expression thoughtful, but it lacks something I cannot quantify, something I have found here. What? Samantha asked, her voice softly. Or looked at her, those cat-like eyes reflecting the starlight spontaneity, joy. The unexpected, she finally said, on Zorax. Everything is planned, calculated. Our lives follow predetermined paths based on aptitude and societal need. We do not choose, we fulfill our function. That sounds. Samantha searched for the right word. Lonely? Ra considered this. We are never alone. We are always part of the collective, always serving the greater good of our species. But here she gestured vaguely toward the town. The lights of windows glowing in the distance. Humans create their own paths. Sometimes chaotic, often inefficient, but uniquely their own. It is fascinating to observe. They continued walking back to the apartment complex, the conversation shifting to lighter topics, but Samantha couldn't stop thinking about Lyra's words about predetermined paths versus choosing your own way. For the first time, she realized how much her own life had been driven by routine, by safety rather than by choice. 2 months and 12 days into Lyra's mission to Earth, she began to notice changes in herself, subtle. At first, then increasingly concerning for a Zoraxian observer, her reports to the High Council were becoming less frequent and more informal. The precise, detailed analyses of human technology and societal structures were now interspersed with observations about human emotion, creativity, and individual expression, topics considered irrelevant by Zoraxian standards. Even more troubling was her growing reluctance to repair her ship. She had all the necessary components now, the guidance crystals had finally regenerated. Yet she found herself inventing reasons to delay the final calibrations. Ra sat in Samantha's living room early one morning. Analyzing her own behavior with scientific detachment, she had developed what humans would call habits, preferences. She enjoyed certain foods, television programs, and books she looked forward to. Samantha's return from work each day feeling what must be disappointment when the librarian worked late shifts. Zoraxians did not have friends, they had colleagues, collaborators, functional relationships based on shared goals and mutual benefit. But what Lyra felt toward Samantha was different. It was attachment, a dangerous emotion for an observer whose primary directive was objectivity. The worst violation of all, she had begun to question whether Earth was truly as primitive as the preliminary reports suggested. Yes, humans fought wars, damaged their environment, and often acted against their collective interests. But they also created art without purpose, music that served no function except to express emotion, and stories that existed solely to make others feel. Perhaps most significant of all, humans formed connections with each other that went beyond practical necessity. They maintained relationships that offered no obvious evolutionary advantage. Lyra had watched Samantha spend hours on the phone with her mother, who lived across the country, had seen her help elderly neighbors carry groceries, had observed her donate books to children who could not afford them, actions that seemed inefficient, yet somehow essential to human existence. These thoughts troubled Lyra deeply enough that she had stopped mentioning them in her reports, focusing instead on technological developments and political structures, the kind of information the High Council valued. She told herself this was not deception, merely prioritization, but she knew better. For Samantha, the past 2 months had been the most extraordinary of her life. The discovery that humans were not alone in the universe should have been terrifying, but instead it filled her with wonder. Each day brought new insights as she explained human customs to Lyra, and in turn learned about Zoraxian society. Today was Samantha's day off, and she had planned a special outing. She had noticed Lyra's fascination with nature, something apparently lacking on the highly developed Zorax, where most natural environments had been replaced by engineered spaces. Lyra had activated her human disguise, and they had driven to a nearby state park where hiking trails wound through forests, along a river, and up to a waterfall. Samantha watched Lyra's reaction as they stood at the base of the waterfall, the roar of water drowning out all other sounds, mist creating rainbows in the sunlight. "It's not controlled," Lyra said, her voice filled with amazement. "It just flows freely, following the path of least resistance. That's nature," Samantha replied. "Things find their own way." Lyra stared at the cascading water for a long time. This would be considered inefficient on Zorax. Resources are too valuable to allow such random distributions, Samantha smiled. "I think that's what's beautiful about it. It's wild, unpredictable." They hiked further along the river, Lyra stopping frequently to examine plants, insects, and rock formations. She recorded everything in her bracelet computer, but Samantha noticed she spent more time simply experiencing than documenting. They sat on a fallen log, eating the lunch Samantha had packed: sandwiches, fruit, and bottles of water. "You have been patient with my questions," Samantha, Lyra said suddenly. "Human behavior is complex. I still struggle to understand many aspects." "What don't you understand?" Reconsidered the question. "Why do humans value individual choice over efficiency? Why do you create art that serves no practical purpose? Why do you form attachments that offer no survival advantage? It seems counterproductive to species advancements." Amantha laughed. Those are some pretty big questions. I don't know if I have good answers. She thought for a moment. Maybe it's because efficiency isn't everything. Maybe happiness matters just as much as progress happiness. Lyra repeated the word carefully. It is a concept we do not prioritize on Zorak's productivity contribution to society. These are our measures of success. That sounds... Samantha hesitated sadly. Ra tilted her head. We do not experience sadness as you do. Our emotional range is controlled moderated. We are taught from early development to channel emotional energy into productive avenues. You never just feel things, occasionally when the conditioning fails. Some Zoraxians experience what we call emotional overflow. Lyra looked away. It is considered a serious defect requiring corrections. Mantha reached out, taking Lyra's hand without thinking. I think feeling things is what makes life worth living. Even the hard feelings. Lyra looked down at their joined hands, her expression unreadable by Zoraxian standards. I am defective then, she said quietly. I have experienced emotional overflow frequently since arriving on Earth. Especially, she paused in your presence, the moment stretched between them. Something unspoken passing through their joined hands. Samantha felt her heart beating faster. Unsure what to say or do, the intensity in Lyra's eyes, even through her human disguise, was unmistakable. The moment was broken by a family with children passing loudly along the trail. Lyra withdrew her hand and stood. We should continue our exploration, she said, her voice returning to its usual measured tone. They hiked until sunset, returning to the car as darkness fell. The drive back to the apartment was quiet, both lost in their own thoughts as they pulled into the parking lot. Samantha noticed Lyra checking her bracelet computer, her expression changing to one of concern. What is it? Samantha asked. Lyra hesitated. Before answering, I have received a signal from the High Council. She said finally, they are requesting a comprehensive status update including ship repair progress. They have not received my regular reports. Is that bait? It is unusual. Lyra admitted. They typically allow observers considerable autonomy, as long as regular data transmissions continue. They are perhaps concerned by my lack of communications. Amantha parked the car, a feeling of unease settling over her. Is your mission ending soon? Lyra nodded. According to the original parameters, I have approximately 2 more Earth weeks before I must return with my findings. She looked out the window, avoiding Samantha's eyes. I have delayed the final repairs on my ship. They walked to the apartment, in silence, the implications hanging heavy between them. 2 weeks suddenly seemed like no time at all. Samantha realized with a jolt how accustomed she had become to Lyra's presence, how the thought of returning to her solitary routine made her feel empty. That night, Lyra sat at the small desk in the spare bedroom that had become hers over the past months. Her bracelet computer projected a holographic display as she composed her report to the High Council she had spent hours trying to organize. Her observations into the precise logical format expected of Zoraxian observers. But her thoughts kept straying. Finally, she began recording, speaking in her native language, which sounded to human ears like musical notes, layered with subtle harmonics. High Council of Zorax, I, observer Lyra, present my findings regarding Earth. Humans have achieved significant technological advancement since the last observation period. They have developed global communication networks, artificial intelligence, and are beginning to explore space beyond their own planet. Their scientific understanding continues to evolve at an accelerated rate. She paused here, considering her next word. However, I must report that previous assessments of human socio-cultural development have been incomplete. Humans organize themselves in complex social structures that prioritize individual choice over collective efficiency. They create without purpose, express emotion freely, and form attachments that transcend practical necessity. These characteristics, previously categorized as primitive, may in fact represent evolutionary adaptations we have not considered. Lyra knew she was treading dangerous ground. Zoraxian scientific doctrine held that emotional suppression was the hallmark of an advanced species. But she continued, I request an extension of my observation period to further study these anomalies and their potential implications for Zoraxian understanding of sentient developments. She ended the transmission knowing it. Would take approximately 1 Earth day for her message to reach Zorax and for their response to return. In the meantime, she would need to prepare contingency plans in the living room. Samantha sat with a book open in her lap. Though she hadn't turned a page in over an hour, her mind was too full of questions. What would happen when Lyra left? Would she ever see the alien woman again? Would anyone believe her if she told them about her experience these past months had changed her perspective on everything? The universe felt both larger and smaller. Knowing that intelligent life existed beyond earthly, Ray emerged from her room, finding Samantha still awake. "My report is complete," she said, sitting beside her on the couch. "I have requested additional time, but it may be denied." "What happens then?" Samantha asked the question she'd been avoiding. The response from the High Council came more quickly than expected. Lyra was working on the final repairs to her ship when her bracelet computer chimed with the incoming transmission. She stood in the clearing, her heart beating faster than normal, as she activated the message. Holographic projection appeared, showing Elder Vex, the head of the observational division, his face impassive as always. "Observer Lyra, we have received your request for mission extension. The Council has reviewed your preliminary findings and notes. Significant deviations from standard observational protocol." Lyra maintained her composure, though she felt a flutter of anxiety. "Your reports have become irregular, incomplete, and show concerning signs of observational bias." The Elder continued furthermore. "Our analysis of your transmission patterns indicates prolonged interaction with a native subject. This is a serious violation of Primary Directive 3. Lyra swallowed hard, unable to deny the accusation. However, the Elder went on, "The Council recognizes the value of the data you have collected and acknowledges that your unique approach has yielded insights that might not have been accessible through standard methods." Lyra blinked in surprise. This was unexpected. "Therefore, you are granted a limited extension of 15 Earth days to complete your research with the following conditions. 1. You will submit daily reports following standard formats. 2. You will maintain your ship in departure ready status. 3. You will prepare the native subject for memory suppression before your departure." The last condition hit Lyra like a physical blow. Memory suppression was standard procedure when accidental contact occurred, ensuring that no human retained knowledge of Zoraxian existence, but the thought of erasing herself from Samantha's memory was deeply disturbing. Elder Vex continued, "These conditions are non-negotiable. Observer failure to comply will result in immediate recall and severe consequences. Your extension begins now." The transmission ended, leaving Lyra alone in the clearing. She sat heavily on a fallen log, her mind racing 15 more days with Samantha. But at what cost? The daily reports she could manage keeping her ship ready was already her plan. But memory suppression, that would mean Samantha would forget everything they had shared, every conversation, every moment of discovery. The connection they had formed would be erased as if it had never existed. The logical part of Lyra's mind understood the necessity of this protocol. Humans were not ready for the knowledge that advanced civilizations existed beyond their world. Such awareness could destabilize their development, cause panic, or worse, lead to attempts at technology beyond their ethical capacity to handle. Yet the part of Lyra that had been changed by her time on Earth rebelled against the idea that all she and Samantha had shared would exist only in her memory, while Samantha would be left with an unexplained gap in her life. As Lyra walked back to the apartment complex, she considered her options. She could comply with the Council's demands, complete her mission, and return to Zorax, leaving Samantha with no memory of their time together. She could refuse the conditions and face immediate recall and reconditioning, or she could find another way. A third option that would satisfy both her duty to her people and what she had come to recognize as her personal ethics. Samantha was cooking when Lyra returned to the apartment, the smell of garlic and tomatoes filling the air. She looked up with a smile when Lyra entered. "I've been experimenting with pasta sauce," she said. "I think you'll like this version." Lyra stood in the doorway, watching Samantha move around the kitchen with practiced ease, this simple domestic scene suddenly precious, knowing their time together was limited. "Did you get your ship fixed?" "Almost," Lyra replied, moving into the kitchen. "I received a response from the High Council." Samantha stopped, Stirring the sauce, what did they say? They granted me an extension 15 more days. Samantha's face lit up with a smile. That's great news, she said, then noticing Lyra's expression. What's wrong? There are conditions, aren't there? Lyra nodded. I must submit. Daily reports maintain my ship in departure-ready status, and she hesitated. Prepare you for memory suppression before I leave. Samantha set down the wooden spoon. Memory suppression, it is standard procedure. Lyra explained gently. When humans accidentally discover our existence, we remove those specific memories to protect both our civilization and yours. It is considered humane. Samantha shook her head, her expression hardening. You're talking about erasing parts of my mind without my consent? There is nothing humane about that. I know, Lyra said quietly. I find myself troubled by this requirement as well. It violates what I have come to understand as personal autonomy, a concept my people do not prioritize, but which I now recognize as significant. They ate dinner in tense silence, Samantha's excitement about the extended time now overshadowed by the knowledge of what would come after. Lyra watched her push pasta around her plate, barely eating her own discomfort with the situation growing. Finally, Samantha looked up. Is there any way around it? Lyra considered her answer carefully. I am weighing options. There might be alternatives, but they would require me to violate direct orders from the High Council. Something no Zoraxian has done in recent memory. Would you be punished? Severely, Lyra admitted. But that is not my primary concern. I am troubled by the ethical implications on both sides to violate your autonomy by erasing your memories, or to violate my people's protocols and potentially put both our civilizations at risk. These are equally problematic outcomes. Samantha reached across the table, taking Lyra's hand. You know, I would never tell anyone about you who would believe me anyway. Many would dismiss your claims as delusion. Lyra acknowledged, but some might not. Earth governments would be particularly interested in evidence of advanced technology. The risk is considered too great. What if I promise to keep your secret? Samantha suggested. I could sign something. Take an oath. Whatever would convince your council that I am trustworthy. Rhys smiled sadly at her naivety. The High Council does not recognize human promises as binding. They have observed how frequently your kind breaks agreements even with each other. It is one reason Earth is still considered developmentally immature. Some felt frustrated anger rising in her chest. So I just have to accept that in 2 weeks, I'll forget everything about you, as if you never existed. She stood abruptly, taking her plate to the sink, the clatter louder than necessary. I don't accept that. Lyra watched her, sensing the emotional turmoil. This was precisely why Zoraxians moderated their emotions. Strong feelings led to irrational decisions, unpredictable outcomes. Yet she found herself admiring Samantha's passion, her refusal to quietly accept what she perceived as injustice. There might be another way. Lyra said carefully, if you're willing to consider something unconventional. Samantha turned. What do you mean? Come with me or turn with you to Zorax? Samantha stared at her in disbelief. Lyra nodded. It is not without precedent, though extremely rare in our history. We've occasionally granted sanctuary to beings from developing worlds, typically in cases where they possessed exceptional knowledge or skills that would benefit Zoraxian society. Samantha laughed humorlessly. And what exceptional skills do I have? I'm a librarian. You have something more valuable. Lyra said, perspective. You experience the world in ways my people have forgotten. You understand emotions, creativity, individual choice. These concepts are alien to Zoraxians, yet they may be crucial to our continued evolution. The High Council might recognize this value. Are you serious? Samantha asked, her voice barely a whisper. Lyra stood, moving closer to her. I would not suggest it. Otherwise it would mean leaving everything behind: your home, your job, your family, your world. It would be permanent. There is no technology capable of returning you to this exact time and place once we depart. Samantha leaned against the counter, her mind spinning with the implications. Leave Earth forever. Lyra was asking her to abandon everything she knew, everyone she loved, for an alien world, where she would be the only human, a world where emotions were considered defects, where individual choice was subordinate to collective good. It's too much to ask. Lyra said, seeing the conflict on Samantha's face. I should not have suggested it. "No, I'm glad you did," Samantha replied. "It's just overwhelming. I need time to think." Of course, Lyra said, "You have 15 days to decide." The next 2 weeks passed in a strange mix of joy and anxiety. During the days, Samantha went to work as usual while Lyra repaired her ship and submitted her daily reports to the High Council. In the evenings, they spent every moment together. Lyra showing Samantha Zoraxian star maps, explaining her world's history and culture, answering endless questions about what life there would be like. For her part, Samantha introduced Lyra to more human experiences. They went to a small local concert where Lyra was visibly moved by the live music they visited. Museums, art galleries, and quiet natural spaces. Samantha trying to show Lyra the beauty and diversity of the world she might leave behind. They never explicitly discussed the memory suppression option. It hung between them like a shadow, making each shared experience both sweeter and more painful. Knowing it might soon exist only in Lyra's memory, one evening as they sat on the roof of the apartment building watching the sunset, Samantha asked the question that had been troubling her for days. "If I stay, what happens to you? Do you still face punishment for telling me about the memory suppression?" The alien woman was sent to Earth on a temporary mission, but now she refuses to leave. The stars shone like diamonds against the black canvas of space. As Lyra checked her ship systems, one final time her slender purple fingers moved with practiced precision across the control panel, her cat-like eyes reflecting the glow of the monitor. The High Council of Zorax had selected her for this mission because of her exemplary record. As an observer, she never broke protocol, never let emotions cloud her judgment, and always completed her assignments ahead of schedule. This mission seemed simple enough: travel to the third planet in this unremarkable solar system. Observe the dominant species for 3 Zoraxian cycles, approximately 3 Earth months, and report back with her findings. The Zoraxians needed to determine if humans had advanced enough for first contact, or if they should remain on the watch list for another century. Lyra had studied the preliminary reports. Earth was experiencing rapid technological development, but remained socially primitive with constant conflicts and environmental destruction. It was a pattern the Zoraxians had seen on countless worlds. Some species evolved past this dangerous phase. Others destroyed themselves before reaching the stars. As Lyra approached Earth atmosphere, her excitement grew despite her professional demeanor. This would be her 7th observation mission, but each new world held its own wonders. She activated the cloaking technology that would hide her small craft from human detection systems, and began her descent, aiming for a forested area near a small settlement, perfect for blending in while conducting her research. The landing should have been routine, but as she entered the atmosphere, a warning light flashed on her console. One of the gravitational stabilizers had malfunctioned. Lyra worked quickly to compensate, but the ship began to shake violently. She gripped the controls, her training taking over as she fought to maintain a controlled descent rather than a catastrophic crash. Trees rushed past her view screen as the ship plummeted toward the forest floor. Lyra braced for impact. The last thought in her mind was the shame of failing her mission before it even began. The crash was deafening. Metal groaned as the ship carved a path through the earth, stopping finally in a small clearing, smoke rising from the damaged engines. Lyra assessed her situation quickly. The ship was damaged but repairable. Her emergency supplies were intact and her personal cloaking device still functioned. The mission could continue, but repairs would take time. She gathered her emergency pack and activated the ship's camouflage system, which would make it appear as a large boulder to any passing humans. Then she stumbled from the wreckage. Her body aching from the impact, the night air felt cool against her skin. As she tried to orient herself, according to her maps, there should be a human settlement nearby where she could observe without drawing attention. Lyra had not anticipated meeting a human so soon. Samantha Miller had always found comfort in routine. Her life followed a predictable pattern that kept anxiety at bay. Wake up at 6:15, make coffee while listening to the morning news, walk to the library where she worked, sorting books and helping visitors find information. Walk home at 9, make dinner, watch an hour of television, then read until sleep came. She found peace in knowing exactly what each day would bring, except today her boss had asked her to stay late to help with inventory, forcing her to walk home under the night sky instead of during the familiar twilight hours. Samantha clutched her bag closer, feeling exposed in the darkness. Her apartment complex was just past the small woods that bordered the town. A shortcut she rarely took after sunset. That was when she saw it, a brilliant streak of light cutting through the sky. It wasn't a normal shooting star. It moved too slowly, and seemed too bright before she could even process what she was seeing. It disappeared behind the tree line, followed by a distant crash that shook the ground. Samantha froze. Most people would have called emergency services or hurried home pretending they hadn't seen anything. But Samantha had always been different. Her mother called it curiosity. Her father called it trouble. She called it her curse, the inability to walk away from the unknown, before she could talk herself out of it. Samantha was pushing through the trees toward where she thought the object had landed. The forest was dark, but the nearly full moon provided just enough light to see by. She stumbled over roots and pushed aside branches until she smelled something strange like burnt metal and ozone. In a small clearing, she found a crater with something moving inside. Samantha approached cautiously, her heart hammering in her chest. Logic told her to run, but that same curiosity kept her moving forward. As she reached the edge of the crater, she saw what appeared to be a woman climbing out of the smoking pit. Her movements graceful despite obvious pain. Samantha should have been terrified, but instead she felt oddly calm as she took in the woman's appearance. She looked almost human except for the slight purple tint to her skin and those eyes that reflected the moonlight like a cat. She wore what looked like a silver jumpsuit with strange symbols etched across the chest. "You okay?" Samantha asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman startled, looking up at Samantha with those strange, reflective eyes. She seemed to freeze for a moment, then touched something on her wrist before speaking. "Yes, I think so," the woman replied. Her voice had an unusual musical quality with an accent. "Samantha couldn't place. My ship needs repair." "Ship?" Samantha repeated, looking past the woman to what appeared to be a large boulder in the center of the crater. Wait, that can't be right. She had seen something crash. She was sure of it. The woman followed her gaze and seemed to make a decision. She touched her wrist again, and suddenly the boulder shimmered, revealing glimpses of metal underneath, before the illusion solidified again. "You saw my crash?" She stated. It wasn't a question. Samantha nodded slowly. "Am I going crazy?" The woman tilted her head, studying Samantha with intense curiosity. "No. You are experiencing a completely rational response to an unexpected situation. I am not from your world." For some reason, this straightforward answer calmed Samantha even as the implications threatened to overwhelm her. An alien, a real alien, standing right in front of her. "You're hurt," Samantha said, noticing a green substance that must be blood trickling from a cut on the woman's forehead. "My apartment isn't far from here. I have first aid supplies." The alien woman hesitated, clearly weighing her options. "I am Lyra," she finally said. "My mission is to observe, not interact, but circumstances have forced a change in protocol." Samantha held out her hand. Samantha Miller. "Welcome to Earth, I guess." Lyra looked at the extended hand for a moment before carefully taking it. Her skin was warmer than a human's and slightly textured like fine suede. "Thank you, Samantha Miller. I find myself in need of temporary shelter while I repair my vessel." This was how Samantha Miller, librarian from a small town, whose greatest adventure had been a weekend trip to the coast, found herself walking through the dark woods with an alien following behind her. Lyra's presence was both terrifying and exhilarating. She represented everything Samantha had never known. She would experience the unknown, personified as they approached the edge of the woods. Samantha suddenly realized the practical problems ahead. How would she explain Lyra to her neighbors? The slight purple tint to her skin might be dismissed as unusual lighting. "But those eyes, don't worry," Lyra said, as if reading her thoughts. "I can adjust my appearance temporarily." She touched her wrist again, and a subtle shimmer passed over her. Her skin tone shifted to a human pale and her eyes changed to a deep brown. The effect was remarkable, making her look completely human, except for a certain grace in her movements that seemed otherworldly. "That is amazing," Samantha whispered. "It is standard technology for observation missions." Lyra explained the effect will last approximately 8 hours before needing to be refreshed. They reached Samantha's apartment building without incident, climbing the stairs to her second-floor unit as Samantha unlocked the door. She had a moment of clarity about what she was doing, inviting an alien stranger into her home. But something about Lyra made Samantha trust her despite every science fiction movie warning. Against exactly this scenario, Samantha's apartment was small but neat, with bookshelves lining most walls and plants crowding every windowsill. Lyra entered cautiously, her eyes taking in everything with obvious interest. "This is your dwelling?" she asked. "It's my apartment." "Yes," Samantha replied, suddenly seeing her familiar space through new eyes. "It's not much, but it's mine." Lyra moved to the bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines of the books. "Physical information storage," she murmured, "fascinating." Samantha watched as the alien examined her home, feeling a strange mix of pride and embarrassment. "Sit down, I'll get the first aid kit." The morning of the final day arrived with a gentle rain pattering against the windows. Samantha stood looking out at the gray sky, a cup of coffee growing cold in her hands. She had spent the night putting her affairs in order, writing letters she could never send, making peace with her decisionly. Ra entered the living room, her movements quieter than usual today. "We must decide," she said simply. Samantha turned from the window. "I've made my choice," she said, her voice steady, despite the tumult of emotions inside her. "I want to come with you to Zorax." Lyra studied her face. "Are you certain this is not a decision that can be reversed?" "Certain." Samantha set down her coffee cup. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Relief and something deeper flickered across Lyra's features. "Then you must prepare. Pack only what you can carry in one small bag. Our departure window opens tonight at midnight." Samantha had already considered what few possessions she would take: photos of her mother and friends, a favorite book, her grandfather's watch, a small plant cutting from her windowsill collection. Everything else would remain behind for whoever found her apartment after she was reported missing. As Samantha packed, Lyra prepared the ship, making final adjustments to accommodate a human passenger. The day passed in a blur of activity and emotion. Samantha wrote a final letter to her mother saying she had decided to travel extensively, leaving it where it would eventually be found. She knew it would cause pain, but hoped the ambiguity would be easier than an unexplained disappearance. At sunset, they stood together in Samantha's apartment for the last time, looking at the home that had sheltered them both during these extraordinary months. "Will I be happy there?" Samantha asked suddenly, vulnerably. Ra considered the question honestly. "Zorax will be difficult for you at first. Our society operates differently from what you're accustomed to. But you will have me. I will help you navigate our world." And she hesitated. "Perhaps together we can bring something valuable to Zorax, something they have forgotten." What? Lyra touched Samantha's cheek gently. "Emotion connection. The understanding that efficiency is not the only measure of an advanced civilization." As darkness fell, they made their way to the forest for the final time, Samantha carrying her small backpack, Lyra leading the way with a small light that cast a blue glow on the path. They moved silently, each lost in thought about the journey ahead. In the clearing, Lyra's ship waited, the camouflage deactivated, revealing its sleek, silvery form under the moonlight. It seemed to pulse with energy, as if eager to return to the stars. Lyra placed her hand on the hull, activating the entrance. The hatch opened silently, revealing the interior, now reconfigured with 2 seats at the control panel. She turned to Samantha. "This is your final opportunity to change your mind once we enter Zoraxian space. There is no turning back." Samantha took a deep breath, looking up at the night sky, then back at the alien woman who had changed everything. "I want to go with you," she said, her voice stronger now. They boarded the ship, Lyra showing Samantha how to secure herself in the secondary seat. The interior lights cast a soft glow as Lyra activated various systems panels, lighting up with Zoraxian symbols and displays. Samantha watched in fascination as Lyra worked her purple fingers, dancing across controls, preparing for launch. Ship systems. Online departure trajectory calculated. Lyra reported atmospheric exit in 3 minutes. Samantha's heart pounded in her chest, a mix of terror and exhilaration washing over her. She was really leaving Earth, becoming perhaps the first human to travel to another solar system, another world, as the ship hummed to life. Lyra paused, turning to Samantha. "There's one more thing you should know," she said, her voice soft. The High Council is unaware of my plan to bring you. They have not approved this action. Samantha's eyes widened. What will happen when we arrive? Lyra looked away briefly. I will face significant consequences, but I believe I can convince them of your value, and if not, she looked back, meeting Samantha's gaze. I have prepared contingency plans. What kind of contingency plans? Escape routes to neutral territories where we would be beyond Zoraxian jurisdiction. Lyra replied, it would mean exile for me, but safety for us both. Samantha reached across the space between their seats, taking Lyra's hand. You would do that for me. Become an exile from your own people, Lee. Or interlace their fingers. I would. The realization is as surprising to me as it is to you. I was selected for this mission because I exemplified Zoraxian values, logic, duty, service, to the collective. Yet my time on Earth with you has changed me in ways I could not have anticipated. I now believe some things are worth the sacrifice. The ship began to rise silently from the clearing, moonlight streaming through the transparent front section. As they ascended above the treetops, Samantha looked down, watching her world fall away. The forest becoming a dark patch, the lights of the town spreading out like fallen stars. Her apartment building just one point of light among thousands. They rose higher, the town becoming smaller until it was just a cluster of lights on the dark landscape as they accelerated upward. The curvature of the earth became visible, the atmosphere, a thin blue line against the blackness of space. Samantha felt tears on her cheeks, not from sadness but from the overwhelming beauty of seeing her planet from this perspective. The ship moved faster, breaking through the upper atmosphere, stars becoming clearer and more numerous without the filter of Earth air. The moon passed by, larger and more detailed than Samantha had ever seen it. Approaching solar system edge, Lyra announced, gravitational influence diminishing, preparing for light jumps. Samantha held tightly to the armrests as lights flashed across the control panel in front of her. Everything beyond the ship was now stars, countless stars stretching in every direction. Light jump in 3, 2, 1. Lyra activated a final sequence. The stars outside seemed to stretch, then blur into streaks of light. Samantha felt a strange sensation, like being pulled in every direction at once. Then stillness. A different kind of space appeared outside the ship, no longer the familiar constellations of Earth, but an entirely new starscape. Jump complete. Lyra said, we are now beyond your solar system, on course for Zorax, approximate arrival in 3 days. Samantha stared out at the unfamiliar stars, her mind struggling to comprehend the distance they had just traveled in. Moments. I can't believe it, she whispered. We're actually in deep space. Lyra smiled, a rare, full smile that transformed her face. Travel between stars is routine for my people, but I understand this is significant for you. They settled into a rhythm during the 3-day journey, Lyra explaining, Zoraxian customs, language, and social expectations preparing Samantha for what awaited them. Samantha slept in the small resting area, while Lyra monitored the ship's systems, requiring little sleep herself. As they approached the Nayavi system, Lyra became more tense, her communications with Zorax control growing more formal. I have informed them only that I am returning with significant research findings, she explained. Not that I am bringing a human. They will detect your life signs as we approach, but by then it will be too late for them to deny landing clearance. Is that part of your plan? Samantha asked, concerned about the deception. Lyra nodded, presenting the High Council with your actual presence, rather than a theoretical request, increases our chances of success. They will be curious enough to grant at least a provisional hearing. The Zoraxian homeworld came into view through the ship's viewing panel, a planet larger than Earth with swirling clouds of pale blue and lavender across its surface, massive cities visible even from orbit, their geometric patterns suggesting the highly ordered society that had built them. Zorax control is requesting identification. Lyra said, her fingers moving across the panel, providing necessary codes and clearances. Authorized for landing Sector 12, they are assigning us a security escort. Lyra frowned. That's unusual. Is that bad? Samantha asked, feeling a flutter of anxiety. It suggests they suspect something. Lyra replied, but it's too late to change course now. She looked at Samantha with intensity. Remember what I told you. Let me speak first. Address the council only when directly questioned. Show respect but not subservience. And most importantly, remember that despite appearances, Zoraxians are not emotionless, merely controlled. The ship descended through the atmosphere of Zorax, the alien landscape coming into view below. Structures unlike anything on Earth rose from the surface, perfectly symmetrical cities connected by transport, tubes, everything arranged in precise patterns. The natural world entirely shaped to Zoraxian specifications. They landed on a platform outside what appeared to be a massive dome structure. Other ships were docked nearby, though none as small as Lyra's observation vessel as the ship's systems powered down. Lyra took Samantha's hand. "Whatever happens, I will protect you," she promised, her voice low and intense. "You have my word." The hatch opened, and they stepped out onto Zoraxian soil. Samantha immediately noticed the difference in gravity, slightly stronger than Earth, making her movements feel heavier. The air, too, was different, thinner, with a faint metallic taste. The sky above them was a deeper blue than Earth, almost indigo with two small moons, visible despite the daylight. 4 Zoraxians approached, each taller than Lyra, with the same purple-tinted skin and reflective eyes. They wore what appeared to be uniforms of silver and blue, their expressions unreadable. Observer Lyra, the tallest, said, in English, "Surprising, Samantha, you have returned from Earth mission with an unexpected companion."